we say that squatting below parallel is not bad for your knees, and eventually you should have the ability to squat below parallel. Doesn't mean that that ability comes right now with these words. There is work to be done to ensure that your body is able to go through that range of motion. And we're going to give you some tips to get there, but just know that for a lot of people, if you have not squatted below parallel consistently for years and you've done a lot of sitting for a lot of years, that range of motion may not be there yet, but it should be something that you are working towards because it is within your body's capability to do. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Rachel.
And I'm doing this for the first time in a long time without an echo, and I'm feeling really good about it. I'm just going to talk the whole time.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, it sounds good to me. I'm all I know is the day that we have like a professional sound, I don't know, I picture it as like I have a very clear picture in my mind of what this person looks like. It's a fictional character, but it's just a professional sound person. They come in, they do all our sound for us.
Lighting.
Sit down. Oh my God.
Lighting, sound, no shadows, no greenness.
Oh,
You know what? One day we're going to look back at this and look at all the adversity and think about the times that you recorded with Kermit the Frog and the times you recorded with Howard Stern and the times that I had to say sentences and then take my headphones off so that I didn't hear myself repeat. And if you've ever... So I don't think it's any secret. I'm a real ADHD person. Imagine just like living your life like that and then hearing other sounds. It's a wild ride. It's a sensory overload.
Wilder than normal. It's already a wild ride.
Right up there.
So 2 things. I just want to say, first, for everyone who has been trying to find a really great dry shampoo, I have super great news.
Oh. Well, it's a great time for that because the summer, I think, is especially like dry shampoo time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know everybody...
we're not going by my hair today. We're just going to don't...
Well, I don't want to go by my...
Yours looks great. Just ignore what's happening over here.
I'm not prefacing this with that my hair looks so great. What I'm prefacing with it is that the last time I washed it was 4 days ago.
Oh, damn.
So it's a really good dry shampoo. And I just feel like everybody has been, messaging us like, oh my God, it's so hot where I live. Like I have to, get my workouts done like super early in the morning, or it's like not even safe in my garage. And it's, I know that people are experiencing heat waves in a lot of places. And honestly, we don't need any reason to more than that already exists to skip our workout. It's like, oh, my hair though.
Yeah.
I don't really want to work out because my hair, I kind of want to wash it again and again and again. It just dries it out. And guys, I have found the Holy Grail. It does not make your hair, you're not like a founding father after you spray it. Like you don't have like white streaks everywhere. You don't look like you're wearing a powdered wig. And it really seriously works. So this is not an ad. I'm just here for as a friend.
What is it?
You got to get Living Proof.
My seat. What is it?
Living Proof. Best hair day ever. Dry shampoo. Best. It's just get it. Just go get it. And you'll be crushing summer workouts and then going out after, and no one will even know.
If this isn't an ad, I don't know.
I'm making a solid case.
I need to call you right now.
Well, listen, when you find, this is how I feel about like girlfriend stuff. Like when you find something good, you just go ahead and
share that shit.
Share it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just feel like it's really a really important thing. And my second thing was I should have cleared this with you before we started.
Yeah, you probably should have. I feel like that's your MO though. Like you don't clear things with me before we start, and then you just like toss them out there and like, haha, that's your face too.
Well, I just wanted to. This one? This face?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that it was a pleasure meeting your friend for the first time this weekend. He was just it was a wonderful time, and I feel like he's a great friend, and I'm super excited for you. That's all.
Oh.
Now I'm gonna do my face. See my face? Should I have cleared that?
Yes.
Oh, whatever. I
Yes.
also have a new nail color.
I love
Let's
actually, I
get
was
it.
gonna say that to you yesterday that I loved your new nail color. I think
Right.
it's like the perfect amount of like we're going bright for the summer, but it's still like I don't know, like not in your face bright. You know what I mean? It's that middle.
Well, we're on like a off schedule. Like me and you are on opposite schedules.
Mm,
So by the time you go in for your next one, you can get this because then I'll be switching it. So
true.
you can
Sometimes I
get it.
just panic and
I'll
go
allow
with
it.
white. Like I get the options are there so many and they're all the you flipping through the fingers everywhere.
So many fingers.
And then sometimes when I pick one, they're like, no, don't have that. And I'm like, oh man, all right.
Oh,
Yeah. So and
really?
then they hand me a different thing and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, and I have to start all over again. And then I just get kind of
Start
overwhelmed.
over.
I like start from the beginning. I have to go
Come
through
back
all of
later.
them. And I'm like, never mind. Just go with white. I get like
Well,
easily overwhelmed. I'm also an extremely impatient nail getter doner. I know a lot of people enjoy this process, but I actually find it I try to prepare myself before I go. Like I if I could bring a headphone to put one in where I can feel like I can listen to a podcast at the same time because my
lots of
toxic
people do
trait
that.
is that if I feel like I'm not getting things done, I start to feel panicked.
Right. So you don't have use of your hands, so you
Yes.
can't work.
Mhm.
So, well, yeah, but that's why you get a pedicure, though.
Yeah, I know, but at
Also.
some point your hands are occupied.
Yeah,
And
but
it's
I
only
think it's
like
a great
30-40
idea.
minutes, so I'm like you really got to be okay. You got
No, I think you should definitely just bring a headphone, like one,
just one, yeah.
and yeah, and just listen to like an audiobook or like
Yeah, sometimes I
something.
forgot the last time and I literally texted Isley and I was like, okay, I'm going there and I forgot my headphones and I'm going to try to stay calm.
Remain calm. I I really I told you a couple of podcasts ago that I had never got a pedicure before. And now I'm like, now it's so funny because now I'm just like addicted.
Yeah.
So I guess that's how that goes.
Especially
But
like they give you a little rub at the
oh
end.
my
I
God,
live for that shit. Like when like rubbing
dude.
my feet is I think it's a love language. I think it's
If they do, if it's done correctly, and the people that give pedicures know how to
yeah.
give a good foot rub. And it's like, this is something that I cannot believe I went 37 years without in my life because it's literally like, I don't even care about the polish. Like, the polish will still be, because I like a gel, it's like, still looks perfect
Yeah.
and it still looks super nice. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to get a pedicure anyways. So, because I got to get that rubbed
I know.
down.
Because I just want someone to touch my feet.
Just for a short time.
So weird.
So anyway, I'm living for these.
Yeah, I
I
love
have a
it.
new dry shampoo. I'm just trying to get my shit together. And I just wanted to share that. And then also I just wanted to share that if you don't know now, CVG's birthday is coming up and you are not ready.
You're not ready.
No,
You
you're
better
not
get ready
ready.
though.
You
You
better.
better get ready to party.
We have
That's
so
not even
many
a song. I just
surprises.
made it up.
Yeah, but I like it was close enough.
Thanks.
It was like Lionel Richie-ish. So I was like,
Okay.
"Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Is that a Lionel Richie song? Oh damn. I didn't know there was any that I didn't know." Um CBG's birthday coming up. You have to be on your 100% attention for all of the announcements because there's so many surprises. There's so many announcements. There's new things. There's sales. There's, can I say, gifts?
You
Can I
just
say it?
did. So if we have to bleep you out,
Oh my God.
if you
You
bleep,
come to our party, it's like a party
it's a
favor.
100% a party favorite. This was
I love
this was the whole idea when we were talking about it. I was like, you got to come with the party favors. The party favors are only going to last for the first like 48 hours. So you can't come that late to the party and still leave with party favors. You know what I mean? You got to get there at the time because
first come, first serve.
Gifts only last for so long.
And you're going to want to, because you're going to die when you see the gift. The new stuff, the sales stuff, it's the best day of the year to be a CVG enthusiast.
It is.
And it's our best day of the year to really be able to thank our community and thank everyone who's ever supported us, because this is our dream and it's our birthday and we're turning 9.
I think we're turning 8.
We're turning 8.
Yeah.
It's like
we're big 8-year-olds. I do just like to reminisce for like a quick second on our first birthday. And when we were like, we should celebrate, because we started the community, and then we were like, we should celebrate our birthday with everybody. Like, why? We can't keep this to ourselves. We have to celebrate with everybody. And that's when it became a thing. Like our first year, it just like took off because it was just so awesome. And it was really cool because we were kind of nervous that day, We were a whole bunch nervous, and we had every reason to be, because we sold out of our free gift in 6 minutes. So we had every reason to be nervous. But also during that day, our community like sent us smoothies. Our whole team smoothies. We took a picture with them.
We gotta put that picture up again this year. Do you still? I mean, like it's somewhere.
Yeah,
it's an old building.
Yeah,
we aren't even in that building anymore, and it's like this tiny little team. We're like doubled in size since
but we
then.
were like, they sent us
we're
all
holding our smoothies, like so overwhelmed that someone would do that. Like it was just like the sweetest thing.
Yeah. It was just really cool. It was just really cool to be like, we came up with the initial idea to celebrate with our community, give them awesome discounts, like brand new things, some gifts. And we were like really excited to celebrate with them. And they just met us right at the door and were like, we're celebrating with you. And it was, I don't know, that just felt so cool to me. Our community is literally like no other. Like I never can explain it to people with where it started to where it's at now. Like I can't even cover it, because they're just unbelievable, and we love to celebrate them.
It's everything to us. And, you got to stop and do these momentous things, because, when you are living a dream and when you've worked so hard towards it, and when you're sharing your vision and your dream with so many people who just get it and love it and have come together to spread it to other people, it's a really special time for us. So this is your formal invitation.
Mm-hmm.
You are invited.
And
you're going to be freaking rocking sale items, new items, and an amazing free gift. So if not, blurb that out.
Amazing.
Oh my God. And then you might get something when you go. Okay, so today's episode, one of our most asked about, and I would say still for some reason a hot topic in fitness, because there are
controversial
a lot of
topics can't die in fitness for some reason. Like
I don't know.
It's so weird. Like you could have a boatload of science to negate something that's been said for so long, and it will just live on. It's so weird because the complex ideas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like gaining new information and complex ideas are really difficult to not only catch fire, but to explain and then to take on after that. It's much easier to say something like squatting below parallel hurts your knees, or squatting with your knees over your toes is bad for your knees. That's much easier to say than, well, it's a complex answer.
It's complicated. It's complicated. Do you have a minute? Yeah. And it's true. We, with so many things in health and fitness, we tend to want to oversimplify. What are you drinking? What is that?
Oh, I'm drinking a cold brew. It's Starbucks cold brew. And for your next ad.
No, because I was wondering about this, because Mark said like, oh, we just switched to cold brew, Starbucks cold brew in the office, and everyone is so excited about it.
Yeah, so there's some of the other ones, and there's some of these, and anytime these are in there, I grab one because the other ones make me sick. So I can only have this one. So I like to be able to get it. So no one else take these.
Do you hear that? Anyone who works at CBG, those are for Kelsea. So, okay, so I want to talk about squatting for a second because number one, we need to talk about how we should be squatting, how far down we should be squatting, what's a healthy squat depth, where we can improve our mechanics on squatting, why we should be squatting, and very importantly, how you can improve your squat depth if you're having trouble getting at or below parallel right now. Because I think that although it has been longstanding that it's like, squatting below parallel has been this controversial topic, I think that's getting less and less. And I think what we're seeing now is a lot of people who are coming forward and saying, okay, I'm into it, I buy it, but I really actually need some work because I can't get there. Like I'm trying and my body is just not allowing me to get the kind of squat depth that I know that I need. So the first thing we're going to do is just kind of cover some general information about squatting, why you should, where you need to be squatting to, what's a good target to set. And then we're going to give you some tips on how, you can increase your mobility and range of motion if you're currently having trouble, getting lower in your squat.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I wanted to say was if you feel that you have trouble squatting below parallel or it causes you pain, that is completely legitimate. That is 100% valid and something that we see a lot of people. So I don't want you to think that just because, we say that squatting below parallel is not bad for your knees and eventually you should have the ability to squat below parallel doesn't mean that that ability comes right now with these words. There is work to be done to ensure that your body is able to go through that range of motion. And we're going to give you some tips to get there, but just know that for a lot of people, if you have not squatted below parallel consistently for years, and you've done a lot of sitting for a lot of years, and you've done a lot of shortening of your hip flexors and tightening your quads and having tighter hips or a lack of ankle mobility, that range of motion may not be there yet, but it should be something that you are working towards because it is within your body's capability to do. It's part of its function, and it should be able to eventually squat below parallel.
It once did, and it once can again with enough work. And you're right. I'm so glad that you opened with that because oftentimes I think that a lot of people are like, yeah, you should be squatting below parallel. So go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And it's
no.
Yeah, but okay, like right now it's legitimately causing me pain. And that is something that certainly holds people back from wanting to work towards something. But here's the thing. I think that if you understand the benefits, it makes it something that you want to work towards, right? So just because you don't have it now, those reps and that consistency and that time and working towards this goal will be all worth it if you understand the benefits. So, I just want to start off with the like squatting below parallels is bad for your knees or your back or your hips or whatever people want to say is bad for. First of all, every study done shows completely the opposite. One of the things that I really think it is important to understand about squatting to depth, and that is your hip crease crossing below the plane of your knee. That's what we're talking about when we're saying hitting parallel. That's going to look different for everybody because everybody's, shaped differently and everybody has different lengths of femurs but on you, it will look like your hip crease dropping below your knee. So squatting to depth is so much actually safer for your knees, hips, and back, especially your spine, because it actually decreases the amount of weight that you can move and therefore the compression on your spine. You have seen people back off the squat rack, quarter squat 1,000,000 pounds, and you can tell that there's no way that they could squat that for depth. Not at all, right? they're compressing their spine beyond a point that they can actually squat. And that's dangerous. And that's why when we say we don't like things like the leg press, right, where you're laying down to press, X amount of weight, we see people, loading up 400 pounds on the leg press and, pressing out these little quarter squats and saying like, oh, I'm so excited. The thing is that is compressing your spine to a place it should never be compressed, because you cannot squat 400 pounds to depth. So that means that amount of weight should not be on your back. It's not safe.
The
Sorry.
leg
I know I
press
came out of
always,
the gate real hard.
the leg press always gets me though, because like
stretch.
I just replay it and its functionality and laying down and loading up while you are laying on your back like that. And I just kind of try to think about how functional that can be in your life. And I'm just like, you know what? No, we're a health and fitness podcast. We're going to talk about functionality. We're going to talk about what is going to help you in your everyday life, what is going to help you, stand up safely if you fall down, if you need to lift up your kids, if you need to pick something up off the ground, what, a limitless life looks like for you when you don't have limitations placed on you because of your body. And that includes the ability to do things like squat down to full depth and complete a deadlift, pick something off the ground and press things that overhead. Like all of these are very functional movements. So when we get into some of those machines that are not based in functionality at all and their targets are just aesthetics and ignoring every piece of function, like I just don't feel like they have a place in the conversation. I'm going to be completely honest about that.
Well, I think that it is a good place for people to start to be concerned about things like their knees, their hips, their spine. Like these are things that are very important.
Yeah.
And without them moving properly, you are in a lot of pain, right? But the best way, if you phrase it in this way, the best way you can protect your spine is to always squat below parallel, because you'll always know that you're under a load that is safe to load on your spine. That's like, not only are we not hurting anything, we're actually working to protect it. And it's the same thing with your knees. It's this idea that we are going to do everything in our life below parallel, right? There's multiple times in your day where we live below parallel. You have to like sit on the toilet every day, guys. Like there's your day does not happen above parallel, right? And to think that we are never going to squat below 90 degrees because that's bad for our knees, yet we do that all day. It's kind of like, what else in your life would you say, I know I have to do this every day, so I need to prepare for it. Like you're going to drive every day. Would we send you out without a single driving lesson?
No.
Here you go. Off you go. Good luck to you. I'm sure it'll be safe. Like, why would we squat down below parallel every single day, multiple times per day, without having trained that habit, without having strengthened the muscles to do that? Where people get hurt is when they're doing things, they're living life, they're moving their body, and they're not adequately prepared to move in those patterns, meaning they are too weak to actually perform this full range of motion. So that multiple times in your day, you're going to be below parallel. And if you don't prepare for that with weight-bearing exercise and squatting below parallel for strength building, you're just not going to be ready. You're going to be on the road with no driver's test.
100%. And now let's say that you don't give a shit about functionality. You're listening to this podcast and you're like, I don't care. I just want my butt to look good. Well, I have good news for you, because 25% of your glute engagement comes with squatting below parallel. So if you want to lose that 20%, then stay above 25%. Then you stay above parallel. But if you want to get that engagement, then you squat below parallel. Because butt stuff,
guys. But when I see people and, they're kind of doing a traditional, like, quote unquote leg day, and they're going and, doing kickbacks and then hip thrusts. And then they go to the squat rack and they're squatting above parallel. I'm like, no, no, no. You could have left all the other butt stuff out and squatted below parallel and got so much more glute engagement. Like, it's clear that you understand whether it's aesthetically or whether it's function, because your glutes are extremely important for protecting,
Oh God.
you from pain. So, we do
And
glutes
they're extremely important because they're a muscle group that is we're sitting on them all the time, so they're susceptible to atrophy. So like, because you're just sitting a lot. Like, modern society, we sit down a lot. Some people have standing desks now, which is great, but we're sitting down a lot. So when it comes to time that you are looking to take care of your body in the gym, you want to make sure that the muscle group that you're sitting on the most during the day, so you're sitting on your glutes and then you're shortening your hip flexors because your legs are more than likely in front of you unless you sit like me. So you're doing those two things. So when we get to the gym, we kind of want to work to correct some of that. And that is working on some glute engagement and then making sure that we have the ability for your hip flexors to be able to go through that range of motion.
Yeah, so, like, I'm into the butt stuff, guys.
That's the
My
sound clip.
husband's gonna record that
We're
and put
just gonna
that.
leave it like that.
I'm into the butt stuff. It had so important, but going and doing, a glute routine and then doing baby squats, you're missing the point. You absolutely must squat below parallel for maximum glute engagement. And then, same thing with your knees. Like, the ligaments in your knee are what is there to help guard you against injury. The way that they hold your knee in place is it's literally everything, because you're going to have changes of direction. And this is in just general life. I'm not talking about like athletically. I'm talking about like you're walking one way, realize you forgot your water, and you turn into another direction and you just like stop and pivot.
Yeah.
Like, these kinds of things are what is being strengthened when you're squatting below parallel. You have to strengthen the ligaments in your knee to help guard them against injury. You cannot think that they're going to be ready to perform when they've received no training.
Oh yeah, 100. Yeah. And then last one, flexibility is underrated. I think this is one of the most important points because especially for us to talk about, we talk about strength training quite a bit. And so if you've listened to this podcast before, you know how much we value strength training and how important it is to have strong muscles that support your bones and that support your daily life. That is just a simple fact. But what's really underrated is flexibility. You cannot live a full, happy, healthy life with no limitations on your body if you have severe flexibility limitations. And that's just a fact. You see it more as you start to get older and where your limitations lie when you start to go through certain movements or certain ranges of motion, and you start to see where like you can't lift your arms completely overhead, or they're not getting to a place where like they should be able to work themselves through a complete range of motion. And this has a lot to do with modern society, of course, with not only us sitting all the time, but we're doing a lot of things in front of us. We are on computers all the time. We're on our phones all the time. So we are working in a way that promotes limited flexibility, to be perfectly honest with you. So when you have your time spent in the gym, it cannot just be spent on building up and not working to correct these things that you're doing on a daily basis that are limiting your range of motion. It's working to correct those and then help you get through a pain-free range of motion. You cannot get through a full squat depth without the correct mobility. You can't get through it. You can't get through it pain-free. I'll tell you that, because that's when you'll start to have things like hip issues. You'll start to have knee issues. You'll start to have things that are just kind of like nagging injuries, because when you have limited ranges, and this is one of the reasons, but when you have a limited range of motion or you have limited flexibility, your body starts to adjust when you force it to go into these positions. And then it's under a load in a position that's not ideal for it. So that's when you start to see people kind of like shift to the side as they're standing up from a squat, or maybe shift forward onto their toes. Maybe their hip flexors are too tight, or their ankle mobility isn't quite there. And it really limits the number of things that we can do to then increase strength. So if you don't have the baseline of general mobility, you cannot build strength on top of that.
That's futile, and it's actually counterproductive, because all you're doing, if you do not have a baseline in general range, like full range of motion and general mobility, then all you are doing is building bad habits, because like you said, you're going to load that up, right? And then your body is going to compensate for all of your shortcomings in ways that are not ideal for, movement patterns. And then we're going to talk about, now there's too much stress here, or too much stress there, or my knees are hurting, or my hips are hurting. And I've said this from the moment that I became a trainer, and I will continue to say this until I'm all done. I would so much rather see someone air squat correctly. You are getting so much more out of a below parallel air squat with weight distributed appropriately than you are getting with, 205 pounds on the bar, squatting a quarter squat, all kinds of hot mass. I'm never, ever going to promote anyone to just go ahead and load a bar and squat, kind of as low as you can, because we want to make sure we get the most weight on there we can for strength building reasons. That is missing the point. We're way out to lunch on everything, every reason why we're in the gym and why we're doing weight bearing exercises. You missed it.
Yeah.
We cannot load you up until you can move correctly and with a full range of motion. So let's talk about right now then what to do if your body will just not go that low. If you right now, first of all, I never met anyone that squats below parallel and also can't tie their shoes. Like, can't squat down and pick up their kit. Like, these are the ways to make sure that you can do everything you want to do. So it's a demonstration of freedom, right? The ability to squat below parallel. If you don't have that right now, or there's pain when you're doing it, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to identify that there's a problem and that there's corrective work to solve said problem. We are definitely not going to say, well, that's just the way my body is, I guess. Too bad for me. Because I think that a lot of times people say, like, well, my body just won't do this thing, so I guess it just won't do that thing.
Oh, 100%. And I just want to echo that with the fact that it is empowering to feel like, okay, I cannot do this right now, but we're going to talk to you about some of the tools that you can put in place to get there, and understand that this is a process that doesn't need to be rushed, that we have to put a lot of different pieces in place to get to a place where you can move pain-free. And we can get you there, but it has to come with a lot of other things. And I just wanted to add one other thing about, some mobility stuff, is that I would rather see, just like Rachel said, if I would rather see someone, air squat appropriately with good depth, rather than, a bunch of weight on the bar and not hit depth. I would rather see you take off 10 to 15 minutes of the time that you could be spending training to work on some mobility. I would rather see that time spent in your session if mobility is a significant issue for you when it comes to movement. And it honestly is for most people. And it's so underrated. And I've had to really talk to myself about this, because I've said, like, I'm on the train of like, just do more. I can get a little bit more of this in. And I have had to say, nope, if you're not going to stretch before bed, I threaten myself. This is what my self-talk is. If you're not going to stretch before bed, you don't get 10 minutes extra of conditioning. I know that sounds opposite for a lot of people, but I value my conditioning time.
never met anybody who loves a conditioning session like you do.
I love it. I love it so much. Like, I love the suffer. But I say you can't have it because you have to spend time on your hip mobility. And I know that that's because it's got to take from somewhere. You don't make up extra time, guys. You got to take from somewhere, and that's the time that you have to take. Do I need more conditioning? What I need is more mobility.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people could just fill in the blank with that, right?
Yeah.
Because like whatever it is that you think you need more of, whether that's, strength building or cardio, fat burning time, or whatever it is whatever the reason is that you're at the gym and that you're driving force, none of that matters without being healthy and being mobile. So like it's all going to come crashing down.
Yeah.
If you don't spend the time now, you will spend the time out of the gym.
Yep.
So, I think that's a really great point to make. And I think that, everybody just needs to check themselves on why am I here? When you feel like mobility is like,
It's
I'm not getting
boring.
enough done.
It's not as
Why are we here though? Why are we here? Because if you're not working on that, you are not getting closer to your goals, because if we're still not squatting below parallel, you're missing 25% of your glute engagement. If you're purely aesthetic, your glutes don't look 25% as good as they could because you can't squat below parallel because you didn't spend time on your mobility. Like it all comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, three things.
So if you're at a place where you cannot hit depth, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is strip the bar. No ego, no weight. We're going back to an air squat. When you can squat below parallel in an air squat, we can start to talk about thing number 2. But the very first thing you need to be able to do is perform this with a body weight movement. So we're taking all weight off, whatever preconceived notions of what you should be squatting or what you used to squat when you did little baby squats that were, moving 2 inches. That all, like, it's all out the window. Goodbye. We need to be able to squat to depth, and that needs to first happen with your body weight.
I love that. It's never
too harsh.
No, you know what? I don't think it's ever important enough. Like, I don't think it's ever can be said enough that like you got to check your ego at the door. And sometimes, especially for women, we don't think about our ego is what's the driving force behind that, but it really is. Right? Like it really is when you're loading up, or even when you're scared to fail, or like things like that. That's your ego talking, and it really has to be checked and say like, what's the big picture here? What am I getting out of it? And how can I do that? And stripping the bar to hit, good mechanics and a full range of motion is really the way to start. The second thing that we want to talk to you about is commit to proper squat mechanics. What does this mean? Okay.
So basically, the way that I'm thinking of this is that so many times as a coach, I have seen people say, I cannot squat to depth. And I've made one small change in their stance, and all of a sudden they can squat to depth.
Now, this is why it's so harmful to have those things that are going around that says your knees should never go in front of your toes, or your toes should be always pointed forward. Completely ignoring someone's basic anatomy in a way to get them to do a thing to make it look like somebody else's anatomy is completely insane and will limit them from being able to squat properly for their body.
Let's go. Your body is your body. Your squat stance is going to be your squat stance. Like there's going to be ways in which you need to be positioned differently to hit full depth than someone else. And like, yeah, you also have different eye color than them. Like why would that be surprising that 2 people's squats would look different when you stand them together and their genetics are completely different? Like they're completely different heights, completely different weights. All of this is factored in. And so, we can make, if you think like I can't squat below depth without pain, or I can't squat below parallel at all, we just may need to make a small or a big adjustment to your mechanics. And then all of a sudden you might find that A, you have way less pain, or B, that you can do something you thought you couldn't do.
Yeah. One of the things I like to tell people, and it's kind of hard to explain over a podcast, but one of the things I really like to tell people too is like when you lay down on your back and you pull your knee in towards your chest and you kind of rotate it through your hips range of motion, you can feel where kind of the deepest spot is with your hips, where your hip kind of sits back, where your leg kind of like sits back into the hip socket. And that gives you a pretty good idea of where your specific range of motion is for your body and where your toe, like looking at your toe positioning when that's pulled in, right? So like some of us have a little bit narrower. Why is that feeling weird? Narrower hips. So where if you're a little bit narrower, you pull your hips in and your toes are more of like pointed forward, and that's where you have that's where your hip sockets are, and that's where it's comfortable for you. For some of us, as we start to rotate our hip out a little bit more, you feel it fall into where it's comfortable, where you're pain free, and then you look down at your feet and see where are your toes pointed there. Now are they a little pointed out a little bit more, and you can see where it kind of falls. And I think one of my training partners, Isley, and we have two very different hips. We both squat well below parallel, but our hips are very different. Hers are very narrow. You can see it just by looking at her. And you know when you watch her squat that her toes are very much forward. I'm very different. My hips are a little bit wider.
Obviously, she has a very narrow stance too.
Yes, but her hips
Yeah.
are very narrow.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really see the difference and kind of feel, and that's when you're not under a load, which goes back to point number 1. You're not under a load there, but you can kind of see where your hips feel a little bit more comfortable and where they can enter in more of their full range of motion without being under any load at all.
Yeah, and I really like the tip of kind of laying on your back and kind of, pulling up the knees and seeing where that gets you and where is comfortable and where is, your kind of sweet spot. Because I think that if you lined a whole bunch of people up and you said, can you squat below parallel? Some people that said no, if you laid them on their back and asked them to pull their knees to their chest, they could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to probably address the fact that it could have something to do with your stance when you're going to squat. It also could have to do with your core. It also could have to do with, there's a lot of very, very important, but sometimes underutilized muscles that go into squatting below parallel. And that's why it's so beneficial, because there are so many more muscles involved than, the little quarter squats. But, if you have a different stance than someone next to you, neither one of you are going to be wrong. Neither one of you are going to be in danger. But where maybe somewhere to just start, if you're not sure at all, you're probably going to be somewhere around hips distance apart, right? And like that could be a little wider, it could be a little narrower. Like as Kelsea said, she squats with like a wider stance than hips, and Isley is like inside her hips when she's squatting. And then your toes are probably going to be somewhere around a 30-degree angle, right? Like that's just a good jumping off point just to start. But then you play with it and see like, wow, and you don't want to be at extremes, but at the same time, like, wow, my toes pointed out a little bit more. It gives me a little bit more range of motion and I feel much more sturdy. And that's the feeling that we're looking for, is that feeling when you're in a position where you're like, wow, I can really grab the floor. My full foot is like grabbing the floor. I have a stable base. I feel sturdy. I feel strong. Like if someone came along to like push me, they wouldn't knock me down. That's the place that is likely going to be your depth as far as your stance when it comes to squatting.
And if you're sitting there and you're like, there is no point of a squat right now where I feel sturdy at all, that's completely fine. We got to work on some of these other mechanics to get there. And you can work on, looking at your squat mechanics and giving yourself a target to get to. So a lot of times we'll use like box squats or put, a med ball under there so that you have something that you're reaching for, and that helps a lot of people who tend to come forward onto their toes, where like they're kind of like always reaching forward and they have difficulty turning on their hamstrings or glute engagement, which is very, very common. And you're gonna feel unstable if you don't have the proper muscle recruitment, right? So if you're going back, you're going to sit into a squat and your hamstrings aren't turning on, of course you're going to feel unstable. Or if you have a lack of mobility in your ankles, which is also really, really common, of course you're going to feel unstable because the base, which is your feet, are kind of like coming off of the ground because you're not able to bend properly in your ankles. You're not able to get through that full range of motion. So of course you're going to feel a little bit unstable there, which brings us to our last point of addressing the restriction. So
I think, I just want to say regarding the falling forward, I think that one of the very first things that happens when we say to people, okay, we want you to try to hit depth, is that they are willing to compromise themselves, kind of leaning and falling forward to try to hit the depth, right? So, like, the first place to kind of trim the fat is like, well, I know if I just sink my chest lower, then that'll make me get lower. And I think that really speaks to one of the most common restrictions as far as people's mobility that I want you to talk about, which is, that it's an ankle problem, right? It's the flexion in your ankles, and the fact that, in order to get your hips below your knees, you have to compromise your body position and come forward onto your toes because your ankles are not supporting that range of flexion.
Yeah, that's so true. That's a really great point. But absolutely something that we can address. And a lot of this has to do with people who have a lot of like ankle injuries. I know a lot of people that I've talked to said like, well, I've sprained my ankle like 6 times when I was in high school. And it's like, yeah, some scar tissue limits some range of motion. Like if you've ever broken any bones in that area, or if you've just had some like damage over and over throughout the years, that's something that can really cause a limitation. Or at one point it caused you so much pain that you honestly stopped moving it. So you stopped working on that mobility. And that's why a lot of like rehab, I'm big about rehab. I'll talk about that till I'm blue in the face. But it's so, so important because once we stop moving, we get an injury and we just like, we let it be almost sedentary. And then we expect it to go back to its range of motion prior to the injury without working it through that range of motion. And I've talked to a lot of people about this because I did tear my rotator cuff. I completely tore my rotator cuff and had a really limited range of motion for a while, but continued to work through it slowly and incremental. I had some incremental gains where like, okay, now I can lift it halfway up. Now I'm going to like more of a 45 degrees. And you just have a little bit more each time, but you have to continue working through the range of motion. The same thing happens with your ankles. So for so many years, you suffered some injuries and then you didn't work on that range of motion. Of course, it's going to be limited when you're coming back. And of course, we're going to have to address it. But there are so many ways that we can do that when you work on mobility, when you work on hip mobility and ankle mobility, before and after your sessions, but build them into your sessions because we can't make up time from nowhere.
Yeah. And nothing's ever forever.
Mm.
There's nothing that you're ever going to do where you're going to say, I injured this so many times that, it's just not even worth working on anymore.
This is your
like,
vessel.
This is just going to be me forever. I guess my ankles just don't work anymore. Like that, nothing is ever forever. You may be at a place in your life or an injury or whatever where it's so extreme that you're never going to be back to 100% in that joint or whatever. But to say that if I'm not going to be at 100%, I might as well be at 0 is like, that's a ridiculous thing, right? We can absolutely be working. And yes, it's not the sexy stuff, but we can be working every single day to increase the abilities of that joint. And, I love the ABCs.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
For people that have ankle struggles.
It's so easy to do while you're just like sitting at your desk, is to like run through the ABCs with your ankles. Like you can do it.
I just did it.
Yeah, me too. As soon as you start talking about it, everyone's foot starts going, right? You start running through that. You're like, but the fact is like hip and ankle mobility is completely necessary to have healthy joints and movement. It's
Make sure
necessary.
that you're getting It's necessary, and make sure you're also getting some soft tissue work
Yes.
in there, right, guys? Like, if you have someone you trust to do that, that's great, but, like, also you know yourself after a specific training session. You're probably not going to be able to get to your soft tissue people like right at the moment, and that's really when the best work can be done. So you got to really focus, and you got to know yourself. You got to say, I have these hips, man, these hips don't lie, and they are struggle. So like after a session, I'm going to make sure that I get in some soft tissue work on my hip flexors. And I'm like Kelsea said, I'm going to spend that 10 minutes, and it's going to take away from my training time. But you know what? That 10 minutes is going to give me back so much more
Yeah. And you can
than
do that by
what.
yourself though. You can do that with a ball, a roller. Like you can get some work done by yourself without having to have another person, kind of work on you. And honestly, like I know sometimes my calves get really tight and like I can do that myself.
So, if you are at a place where you are not yet squatting to depth and you'd like to have a coach, look at your movement. If you hop in our CVG Nation app, we have extremely experienced coaches along with Kelsea and I who are in there. You can post a video of your squat. Give us a good angle, guys. Don't, be from the rafters. We're trying to see you from 900 feet away.
In the
Give
dark,
us a
in the
good
back cave.
angle. And it's like there's no light and like we're not sure which one you are.
You're wearing black.
Give us a good angle and we'll look at your squat. We'll tell you some things that you can work on. And if you are not yet at a place where you're squatting below parallel or ability wise, or you're having pain when you do it, just know that this is not forever. You can absolutely improve these things. And when you do, you will get so much more out of that movement and you will be so much safer just moving in your life because you will be prepared for a life below parallel.
Oh, hell yeah. Let's go. All right, guys. Have an amazing week. We will see you in our group or in our app, CVG Nation. We love you.